Welcome to Talk Law Radio with attorney Todd Marquardt of the Marquardt Law Firm at marquardtlawfirm.com.
Now it's time to discover your hidden legal issue blind spots by listening to me talk about the law on the radio. Today we're going to be talking about last wills, living wills, and living trusts. Which will are you missing from your estate plan? Well, you're probably not missing the last will because you hear me talk about that a lot. Everybody over the age of 18 needs to have a last will to name their executor and to name their beneficiaries. And you know that has to be legally valid, has to be written according to the Texas Estates Code. And so a lot of people ask me, hey, can I just write my own will? Well, you can, but should you? I don't know. You know, you can probably find instructions on the internet about how to take your own appendix out, but would you really want to do that? If you make a mistake, how are you going to get it repaired? It's the same thing with the last will. How is that different from a living will? Well, the living will is really that document that you sign when you have a strong preference that if you were in a coma or a vegetative state and it was terminal or irreversible, whether or not you would want to withhold or withdraw life support or whether you would want to be kept alive. That's the living will. So what about the living trust? Well, that's a trust that you establish during your lifetime, and you name successor trustees to manage the assets that the trust owns. And it says how you want to be taken care of if you're disabled or incapacitated. And it also says who will receive your assets after you pass away, how, when, and in what way. So that's the last will, the living will, and the living trust. And those things are all different. They just have words that are similar, which reminds me, 20 years ago when I was in law school, I had a professor that was helping us prepare for the final exam of the course. I think it was Texas Civil Procedure, and he was telling us that we were going to have essays, and one of the students, definitely not me, asked, Professor, if we answer the question, but we don't use the words that you want us to use to describe the civil process that's the heart of the question, will we get credit for that? And you know what he said? He said, no, words matter. The meaning of words matters. And so that's why it's advisable for an attorney to create and draft and design and help you implement your estate plan. Because if you get these three things mixed up, last will, living will, and living trust, you could be up the creek without a paddle. You know, years ago, I ran into the heir or the beneficiary of a deceased person, and they brought me this document that said living trust at the top, and then it named an executor to wrap up the affairs. And so I call this a Frankenstein document. It was a little bit living trust and a little bit last will, and it created a problem, of course, because it named an executor. I filed it for probate, and that for that reason, and another reason too, that there were no assets titled in the name of the living trust. And so if the trust doesn't own these assets, then the deceased person's estate owns the assets. And so that's Probate's the process of wrapping up those affairs, paying the bills, and distributing the property to the beneficiaries. So you can just imagine what people are doing trying to write their own will or trust in this circumstance. So those are some hidden legal issue blind spots that I wanted to address with you before I talk about the will that you might be missing from your estate plan. But before I get to that, I want to talk about the sinners and the saints. Okay, how do you like the new music? Pretty terrific. So today's saint, I like to talk about the sinners and the saints because Martin Luther, the famous theologian that nailed his 95 Thesis to the church door, 1517, said that we're all sinners and saints. We're born sinners because Adam and Eve sinned, but because of Jesus, his sacrifice and resurrection, we've been forgiven and absolved. But I like to talk about the saints and the sinners. Somebody in the news that has done something terrific, and maybe somebody that's made a mistake or committed a crime. But today I'm going to focus on St. Patrick because St. Patrick's Day is coming up. And so I asked Grok, that's the artificial intelligence for X, formerly known as Twitter, tell me about St. Patrick. And I don't know if all of this is true. There's a lot of myths and mysteriousness around all of the people that are named saints, I think. I didn't grow up in the Catholic Church, and so I don't know the Church's teaching on this. But this is what Grok said, that St. Patrick wasn't born a saint. In fact, he didn't have a very strong faith until it's said that he got kidnapped by some Irishmen that came into Scotland and raided his town, took him as a slave, and he was a shepherd in some very harsh conditions. And he weathered those storms with prayer and faith in Christianity. And somehow he found a way to escape. He went back to his hometown, and then he had a revelation that he should go back to Ireland. Well, he didn't go back right away. He went and learned theology, I think in France somewhere. He eventually did make his way back to Ireland, and his focus was converting Irish pagans to the Christian faith. And the myth is that he expelled all the snakes from Ireland. But that might be a myth. It just might be an analogy of him converting pagans to Christianity. But that's something that he's known for. Another thing is the clover, the three-leaf clover, which he used as a symbol to explain Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. So just like most holidays, there's a lot that has changed over hundreds of years. And where he's buried, they would have a celebration on the anniversary of his death, and that was known as St. Patrick's Day. So what do you do on St. Patrick's Day? Do you like to drink green beer? Do you like to go down to San Antonio Riverwalk and see the Green River? Do you like to go to the parades? I don't do much of any of that because, like I said, I'm not Catholic and it's not a Protestant holiday. But anyway, I did go to the St. Patrick's Day parade in New York City one time with my daughter, which was quite a spectacle. I mean, it was a really big deal. There was a huge crowd, and I had to make sure and hold her hand so she didn't get lost. But that's the saint for today. And so I also want to remind you that You can find previous episodes of Talk Law Radio on YouTube. Just go to YouTube and click the magnifying glass, type Talk Law Radio, and look for the Lady Justice logo with the red, white, and blue colors and click subscribe. That way you can get notified when new episodes are posted, and you can watch them in bite-sized segments, 10, 12, 14 minutes sometimes, and you can even listen while you're walking the dog, washing the dishes, or working in the garage. That'd be a big help to me. Go to YouTube and search for Talk Law Radio. Also, we're on podcasts everywhere. So if you hear an episode that you really like and you want to share it with your friends, you can go on your smart device, your cell phone, and click that share link and share it in a text. That way, your friends and family can be just as informed as you are about these hidden legal issue blind spots, and you won't feel like you're the smartest person in the room trying to explain everything to everybody. Say, hey, listen to Todd Marquardt on Talk Law Radio. He's on the radio, he's on Facebook, he's on YouTube, he's on podcasts everywhere. Oh, and you can find archive episodes on talklawradio.com. Just scroll down and look for the subject that interests you, whether it's last wills, living trusts, or tax-protected inheritance plans. Also, new businesses and old businesses which might have issues with corporations, contracts, or lawsuits. We got to take a break. We'll be right back.
This has been Talk Law Radio with attorney Todd Marquardt, brought to you by the Marquardt Law Firm. You can learn more at marquardtlawfirm.com. And be sure to listen to the full Talk Law Radio show Saturday mornings at 11 on 9:30 a.m. The Answer.
Most families don't realize they have hidden legal blind spots until it's too late. Wills, trusts, Medicaid planning, even protecting a business. These are the kinds of issues attorney Todd Marquardt helps uncover before they become problems. Todd is the host of Talk Law Radio, where each week he guides listeners through the legal challenges families, veterans, and business owners face, while showing them the practical steps to protect what matters most. Catch Talk Law Radio, Saturdays at 11 a.m. on 9:30 a.m. The Answer, 6:30 a.m. The Word, and now in Houston on AM 1070 and 103.3 FM The Answer, or anytime on YouTube. Planning isn't just about documents. It's about peace of mind, security for loved ones, and building a legacy that lasts. Don't wait for a crisis. Do it before you die.